show for all your latest UFC news and rumors. It's Brian Coyle. It's Sean Stanley. It's the TFM Live podcast. And it's now.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TFM Live, the official podcast of FullMountMMA.com. I'm Brian Coyle, joined alongside Sean Stanley from 1,000 miles away. How's beautiful, sunny South Florida, Sean?
Right now, it's a little dark, but it is a beautiful night here in the great state of Florida.
Yeah, it's raining and there's leaves all over the place in New Jersey.
Yeah, none of that. Well, the raining part happens usually about 3 to 4 in the afternoon, and then it's good after that.
Yeah, you can plan around that, though. You like, people plan their days around how it's going to rain at 3 o'clock every single day.
Yeah, it's not like traffic. It's we do around the weather and traffic here.
Yeah, it's just nuts. But in any case, I'm excited. It's not a loaded week full of news, particularly like for like big fight like cards and all that stuff. But we do have some nuggets that we've seen along the way this past week, and I wanted to start with something that broke literally tonight on UFC Tonight. Dustin Poirier, Joe Duffy. That's going to happen, but not when it was supposed to. Obviously, the main event was canceled at UFC Fight Night 76 in Dublin, Ireland on Saturday. Now it's going to happen January 2nd in Las Vegas, as announced on UFC Tonight. On Wednesday, we get Poirier and Duffy on a card with Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit and Andre Arlovsky and Stipe Miocic. What do you think about immediately putting these guys back together? I love the idea. I mean, Duffy suffered a concussion in like the last stretch of his training. Gives him time to recover. Couple months, bam, put these guys right back together. You got a really, really fun, close to a co-main event kind of fight. I think it's a great idea. What do you think?
No, I think it's a great addition to the card, and then I mean, just reading some of the things from this, the knockout, and then word got out to the officials. I mean, he was actually trying to get to Ireland, I guess, and do this fight the first time, and now we will get it as part of the UFC card, 195.
Yeah, and I think Poirier was getting a lot of, for lack of a better word, stuff, getting a lot of crap from fans about not taking a fight with Norman Park, who beat Reza Madadi by unanimous decision in Ireland, but they were going to move Park up to fight Poirier. Poirier, didn't mince words about it. And he caught a lot of crap from fans saying, "Oh, you should have taken the fight. And he said to Ariel Helwani, who does a great job on multiple platforms, on his show, The MMA Hour, saying, "quote If I would have thought like the fans think, I'd be broke and brain dead and fighting everybody every weekend. Hey, I'm a prize fighter, and the prize wasn't right. So he came back home. We'll see what happens next." And now he gets his fight with Duffy just a couple weeks later and a bigger platform. I thought it was a great decision by Poirier.
No, definitely. I mean, again, we talked about it last week. There's nothing to gain and everything to lose for Poirier.
Yeah, exactly. We had the same situation with Ben Rothwell and Matt Mitrione, and Rothwell didn't want to fight him because there was literally no incentive for him to do it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
The risk outweighs the reward.
Yes, but sometimes if you get hurt and pull out of a fight, you end up with a better fight, like Stipe Miocic did on that same card. But that card's going to be sensational. Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit is going to be a massive fight, not only in scale, but in the amount of violence that will be inflicted upon both fighters. It's going to be a nasty knock him out, drag him out. I see a McDonald Lawler sequel, if you will, with the Natural Born Killer inserted into that lineup. But this was not the only other fight news announced today. You can see this on the FullMountMMA.com right now. Rose Namajunas replaces Joanne Calderwood at UFC Fight Night 80, and she will fight 21-year-old budding superstar in the strawweight division, Paige VanZant. Namajunas is ranked 3rd in the strawweight division, replacing the number 8 ranked Calderwood. Paige VanZant is ranked number 6. Can't put too much stock into these strawweight rankings because the division obviously is fairly new, but this is kind of a big deal, isn't it, Sean?
Oh, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, we've discussed it. A step up in opponents, and I don't know if this is I won't say a smart move by the UFC, but I mean, it's definitely putting her in there with a challenge of, instead of the Calderwood, who would have been kind of like right in her face for her. It's going to be a huge challenge for VanZant, and this could derail some of that momentum that she was building here in the UFC.
Yeah, and Namajunas is the type of fighter that, I mean, she's got a pedigree to her. She did the in the quarterfinals of the Ultimate Fighter when they went to strawweights in season 20, defeated Joanne Calderwood, Randa Marcos in the semifinals. She lost a tough one to Carla Esparza, but she's got a track record, and I'm really excited to see, like you said, Paige VanZant doesn't get a tomato can this time around. She gets somebody who has more experience than her, plain and simple.
And it kind of goes against what we were talking about, where we think they should kind of plan her out, because you already got all these names in the in the women's division, strawweight and everything else. But now, if she wins this fight, she's almost pretty much guaranteed a title shot soon.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Joanna Jędrzejczyk in her next title fight, I mean, her challenger came out of nowhere, wasn't even ranked. So, and because Claudia Gadelha obviously had the hand injury and wasn't ready to fight. So I think Gadelha would be next. But when you look at the rest of that, Paige VanZant starts racking up wins, or Namajunas starts racking up wins. This is a very intriguing matchup and a very big one with a lot of ramifications about who could possibly get a title shot down the line. And that card is, I think that's, I mean, Fight Pass is a great tool for fans, for media, for all this kind of stuff. It's one of the good things that UFC does. But I would be very excited to get Fight Pass and watch VanZant headline as well, to see Super Sage Northcutt in his second ever fight. And Jim Miller is on that card, I think, as well.
Yeah, yes.
So there's a lot of intriguing fights to start off that weekend. And that weekend's obviously huge because you get Chad Mendes and Frankie Edgar on Friday night for the Tough 22 finale, and then obviously UFC 194, which has the potential to be the greatest card in the history of the company. And that's not a hyperbole, folks. When you look at that card, it's pretty insane. Is it not, Sean?
No, it definitely is. And you just wonder, we give all this talk. I mean, for the longest time, we were talking about UFC 200, but you're just wondering on how, you got this 194 card, how much bigger will you be when you actually get to 200?
Yeah, Aldo McGregor, Weidman Rockhold, Jacare Souza, Yoel Romero, Max Holloway, Jeremy Stevens, Damian Maia, Gunnar Nelson, Uriah Faber, Frankie Sanz, Tisha Torres, Michelle Waterson. This is a loaded card.
Yeah.
It's going to be a December to remember for the UFC, as long as everything holds together. Yeah, remember,
that's been the problem right now, is these fights staying together.
38 changes in co-main events or main events. That's Mike Bone of MMA Junkie, I believe, had that stat, which is just incredible. It stinks, plain and simple. But to have that many co-main events and main events rescheduled is just terrible. Now, you know what also is just terrible, Sean?
I do not, but I guarantee you I'll probably find out in the next couple seconds.
Well, that would be this sham of a return by Fedor Emelianenko right now. Because remember how a couple podcasts ago I completely went off the rails and bashed Fedor and bashed Risen Fight Federation for what they have planned for what could be considered the greatest heavyweight fighter in MMA of all time, what his opponent may be.
How can I forget that?
Yeah. Apparently, they think it's not a good idea anymore to have Jadeep Singh as Fedor's opponent, because they weren't very impressed by Singh's most recent performance They said he looked out of shape and would be a tough sell to the Japanese public. Now, if you remember, we ripped Singh because didn't he have, I don't know, 2 total MMA bouts in his entire career?
Yeah, I was going to say, when we first started ripping him, he'd only had 1.
Yes.
And then the other one, now he's got 2, and we thought that he didn't look good in either, but hey, who are we?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we know anything about this stuff. But it's just another thing that goes to show. Like, do you have any idea what you have here? Like, Fedor is a great attraction. But when you see these fantastic matchups in the UFC over and over and over again, that's what's going to draw. It's not like, oh, this is a cool niche thing that we're never going to get to see, so let's watch. Like, one of the things that the UFC is completely obliterated from the fight game, and I actually love this, is you're getting guys fighting against one another that aren't both undefeated, that aren't both, like, you'll see some guys have 3 losses, 5 losses, 7 losses, whatever. A loss does not destroy your credibility in mixed martial arts in the UFC. Not like, I don't know, boxing, for example, where they avoid guys because they don't want to have somebody lose and it destroys all their credibility. You don't want to. Triple G isn't fighting anybody realistic. Floyd's not fighting anybody realistic because it's just too much at stake. When the UFC, 2 guys slug it out, put on a fight of the night, it's like, okay, who cares? I mean, if this guy won, obviously he's going to move up, but the guy who lost isn't detrimentally affected by it.
Yeah, I don't think it's detrimental unless it's the fashion on how he loses, not necessarily that he loses. It's just on how. I mean, because if he gets dominated, then he may, it may fall down more. But I mean, if it's competitive, like the fights that we see most of the time in the UFC, I mean, it's not really. I mean, you might move a couple places down or maybe fall a little bit behind for the next title shot. But yeah, I mean, there's not. Is it more ego driven? You think boxing?
I mean, the whole problem with boxing in general, I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, but there's way too many titles. Mm-hmm. The IBF, I mean,
it's almost like
WBC.
independent wrestling. You can make your own federation and give yourself a belt.
It's just too much going on, and you can't keep things straight. You just can't. In the UFC, you have the weight classes. Maybe there should be more weight classes. It's been something that's been discussed, and Joe Rogan's been a huge proponent of it. But it's boxing, to me, could take a lesson from the UFC. Rizin could take a huge lesson from the UFC. What draws is big star power, big fights against 2 individuals. It's not just like, watching Fedor in his event. Like, when people watched the Floyd Mayweather-Manny Pacquiao fight, because it was 2 guys that people enjoyed watching. Of course, it delivered in every single way, but when Floyd's next fight, Andre Berto, nobody watched it. Why? Because nobody cared, because Berto obviously was outmatched in every single way. And when you look at the UFC, you're getting Aldo and McGregor. And if one of those guys loses, if Aldo loses and doesn't and gets thrown back into the picture, Frankie Edgar or Chad Mendez, whoever wins that fight, will jump up. When you look at the middleweight division, you've got Weidman, Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero, Jacare Souza. Whoever wins Souza Romero is jumping right up. And it's not like there's a depth in talent or like a gulf in class, if you will. It's bam, bam, bam. And I love it. It's something that feeds in the fans. You never lack interest, and there's quick turnover with these guys. So yeah, if they lose, so what? It's not the end of the world. If you lose 4 fights in a row, then you got a problem. Mm-hmm. But if you lose 1 fight and then win 2 great fights, and you lose against a champion, you drop back down. I like the way things are, and it's like, what did Rizin expect, and what do they expect from American audiences, especially? I mean, I get Fedor is a big enough draw for the Japanese audience, but what are they expecting here internationally? Like, I don't know what they exactly think is going to happen.
I mean, and then also, I mean, weren't they saying they're only going to do like 2 events a year or something like that? I mean, how do you build a federation 2 fights a year? I mean, you're going to have I'm guessing you're going to have pretty much the same people on the card. You can't have one guy fight just once a year. I wouldn't think you're going to have Fedor fight once a year. He's going to probably be on both cards. I got to think you're going to have one at the beginning of the year, maybe one at the end of the year. But I guess how I don't understand. So say Fedor fights somebody this time. How do you set up his next fight? I mean, it's just like you're hand picking opponents.
Yeah, and it's not a good look, period. It just doesn't really work for them at all, and nobody's gonna care. You're putting it on New Year's Eve. You know how many things they're gonna go up against on New Year's Eve, at least in the States. I mean, Spike made this whole big deal out of it, and they're gonna show it on tape delay nonetheless. I mean, what year is this? This isn't the 1980s Olympic hockey games. Like, this is absolutely insane. And they're going against college football playoff. I just don't understand any of it. I think it was just bad planning. And I mean, if they wanted to bring this back, so be it. But nobody is going to care about Fedor's return, which is unfortunate. Because Fedor comes back in the UFC, it's one of the hugest deals imaginable. It's incredible. The Bellator reaction when he came out was like, okay, cool. Wait, is he fighting for Bellator? And there was so much misinformation and not enough out there to, okay, this is where he's fighting. He's fighting with Bellator. Or he's like, it's too many weird deals going on, and that much confusion confuses the viewer. And it's like, I don't want to waste my time. I got valuable, there's television. It's a valuable time slot. It's a valuable piece of real estate, and they're just putting out all these numbers and all these things, and it's overwhelming people, and nobody's gonna care. It sucks, because Fedor's return should be big, right?
No, it should be, and we are building it up. When he gave out that cryptic tweet that he wants to fight the best, we were thinking, okay, all right, maybe he's finally made a decision. He's gonna, we were hoping he'd probably, show up at the UFC. And then when he showed up at the Bellator, and then it's like, oh, he's fighting for this, and then all of a sudden it's like the Singh was labeled as his opponent, and now they pretty much handpicked an opponent to try to build up Singh, and then they didn't like what they saw.
Yeah.
So I don't understand what they thought would change from one fight to this fight. I mean, it's not like the guy's been an MMA guy he's got one MMA fight. That's all he's got.
Yeah, he's got nothing. And a couple new opponents have been discussed, according to Helwani. So Palele, who recently retired from the UFC, or was cut by the UFC. Sean Jordan, who we actually talked about, I think, last week on the show.
Yeah, because he threw out his name as soon as he got cut by UFC. He was the first one to say he wanted Fedor.
Yeah, and then Randy Couture, who, I mean, the guy's 50 years old.
Yeah, I mean, but again, that's the name. That's the name, but it's not a big. To me, I think I know how that fight would go, and plus, we're gonna know what the result is before we get to see the fight anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it just frankly, unfortunately, doesn't matter. We want to remind people this is TFM Live, the official podcast of the FullMountMMA.com, where you can read a whole bunch of stories every day. Of course, it's a little bit of a dead time right now, but as business will begin to pick up, as one of my favorite sayings goes, the FullMountMMA.com will have stories cranked out about the latest news in mixed martial arts regarding the UFC, from me and Sean, of course. And you can follow us on Twitter at the Full Mount, at BCoyle11, at SS Sports Talk. The podcast is growing by the day. We will be on iTunes soon. I can't give a date on that yet, but things are in the works, slowly but surely, in regards to that. But right now you can catch us on SoundCloud, and soon YouTube. The YouTube page will be updated as well. And Sean, we may have some news about a potential guest coming up on today's show. which we'll get to later on in the podcast, and future guests as well, as me and you have been discussing off air. But one of the news stories right now that you can read on the fullmountmma.com is about the UFC doing something which honestly makes a lot of sense. There's a report out there from Chris Matthews of Las Vegas CBS affiliate KLAS that the UFC is in talks with AEG and MGM about potentially buying naming rights to the brand spanking new Las Vegas Arena on the Las Vegas Strip. The first sporting event at the $375 million 20,000 indoor arena will be UFC 200 on July 9th, 2016. So, Sean, isn't it just a great idea? Just buy the naming rights. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it makes. Is there a bad thing for that? You'll have I'm just making up a name, but UFC 200 will be at the UFC arena in Las Vegas. I mean, does it get any better than that?
Not really. I mean, you want branding. You want total branding. That's the way the UFC can do it. Of course, Dana White was at the groundbreaking ceremony for the arena back in May of 2014. It's been a big push by the UFC with this arena because it gives them a bigger, newer, more modernized thing with the because you have the MGM Grand, but this is a little bigger, a little bit more modern, brand new. Venue set to open in spring of 2016 as a part of a joint venture between AEG and MGM Resorts International, and it will likely play host to future MMA and boxing events. And who knows, the way the push for the National Hockey League expansion or contraction or movement of a team could play host to some hockey games later on, and that would be a big deal if the UFC Center, if the UFC can grab naming rights for an NHL team, regardless of what your thoughts on hockey are, and regardless of whether you think how popular it is. Las Vegas has a very strong hockey following, so don't be surprised if you see something like that in the future. But UFC Arena, does that have a good ring to it, or do you think they should do something? Zuffa, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I was looking at some of those things, and they're saying the UFC Center. I mean, would you name it after the Dana White Arena?
No.
The Zuffa Brothers Arena. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, you got so many ways to go.
Yeah,
and just the fact that they're going to have their name all over, if it goes through, they could possibly have their name, where basically this is their home anyways, as it is, and now they're going to have an arena with their name, their branding, and they're going to, I mean, this is like the end-all be-all for them almost.
Yeah.
I mean, other than bringing out a network, like on regular TV, I mean, that's what else? What else can you do from that point?
And they've got a great deal with Fox right now, the way they're broadcasting everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, you pretty much call it UFC Network.
Yeah, because, I mean, that deal with Fox Sports has incredibly expounded the amount of coverage that this gets. Because when you look at other networks, I mean, ESPN has slowly come along. I mean, CBS and Showtime used to have Strikeforce.
Yep.
Not anymore. It's not as big of a proponent on that network. But Fox Sports 1, it's growing by the day, and having major stars like a Ronda Rousey and like Conor McGregor, like these major stars, and making
brandable major stars. Yeah,
yes,
brandable major stars. Yep.
And speaking of the brandable major star Ronda Rousey, who fights in a couple weeks in the Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, Australia, for UFC 193 against Holly Holm. She had a great quote recently. She wants to be a champion in more ways than one. She wants to be a boxing champion, a UFC champion, and a WWE Divas champion at one point in her life. She said, I really like to do, I don't know if the time to, I just want to do so many things. I want to be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of all time in any sport. I have an Olympic medal. I want to retire from MMA as one of the greatest. I would love to have the chance to be boxing world champion. Holly Holm, of course, being a boxing world champion. I would love to have the chance to be a jiu-jitsu world champion. I'd love to have the chance to be Divas world champion, just be the best at everything at one point. Now, I can say with great certainty, the way Rousey's career is going, she'll definitely be Divas champion at one point, the way her interactions have been with the WWE.
Just the fact that she's got the name right now, too. That right there would put the strap on her easily.
Yeah, but boxing world champion, I get the jiu-jitsu part. That's interesting to me because Rousey is slowly adding new stuff to her game, over and over. But that's intriguing. Because
could that be a shot at Holly Holm? Because wasn't she a boxing champion?
And that's the weird thing, because Rousey came out and said it's nice to have somebody who's not throwing me into the bus every chance I get as an opponent. So I don't think it's a shot. I just think Rousey thinks she can do this. And Rousey's become UFC champion. She's won an Olympic medal. She's been a superstar on wrestling television at WrestleMania, which she had the crowd of 85,000 people eating out of the palm of her hand. I wouldn't put it past her. She's in movies. She's starring in a Roadhouse remake, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I just hope she pulls somebody's throat out of their body like the great Patrick Swayze once did. But I wouldn't put it past her. The way things are going for Ronda Rousey right now, everything's coming up Millhouse.
Yep.
That's the way it works.
I mean, the only thing that, I was discussing with one of the guys here, and I mean, her issue right now is going to be, I guess she's going to have to work something out with the UFC, or she leaves the UFC. But I don't know if leaving the UFC or MMA right now is, I won't say good for her brand, but with all, it's kind of died down now. The Cyborg talk really has died down. Mm. But with Cyborg saying, hey, I'm trying to drop down now, and all of a sudden she gets out of MMA, doesn't it kind of take on the possibility that, now she's getting out, whether she, there's still that thought that, the one person that could beat her would be Cyborg. And now that she's dropping down, now, if she was to say, hey, I'm going to move on to this, I just think, the antagonist would be, oh, she's trying to get out now before she has to fight Cyborg.
Yeah, but honestly, it doesn't matter, because when you look at Chris Cyborg and you look at Ronda Rousey, there's no comparison when it comes to draw or star power or anything
none
like
at
that.
all. None at all.
And we started off the show talking about the fact that Dustin Poirier didn't want to fight Norman Park because it wouldn't be beneficial to him. Right now, is it that beneficial for Ronda Rousey to move around all of her movie commitments, to move around a possibility of doing something in WrestleMania again with WWE, to bend to the pressure of fighting Chris Cyborg if she has to go out of her way? If they book the fight and it's all great, I mean, that's fine. But does it benefit her that much to try to keep fighting for this fight, or just to take on the approach that if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm not going to lose sleep over it.
Well, no, I think her approach is that, but I think the I don't know if you say diehard MMA fans or anything like that would be saying, they want to see that fight, and I'm not saying that I don't care either way now. It's just been so long, but I mean, I think it could be the only thing that I see that would be a win for her would be probably the financial side of it if that fight was to happen. But other than that, there's nothing else for her to gain. Everything would be for Cyborg to gain.
And then, the financial point, Josh Barnett, UFC heavyweight, said, I'm going to go out and make movies because I'll make more money. And we have guys ranting about the Reebok deal.
Josh Barnett is not Ronda Rousey.
Oh, no.
You're not getting the pay-per-view buys. I think if she fought Cyborg, I think the pay-per-view buys, I wouldn't say they're going to be but I think it would be higher, or some of the higher ones in Rousey's career if this fight was to happen.
Yeah, is it more beneficial for her to shoot a movie with Mark Wahlberg or to fight Chris Cyborg?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, look, personally, I think she should, right now capitalize on her brand and her name. But I'm saying, you're going to have those MMA fans and be like, oh, now she's running. It's going to look like she's running. And I'm not saying I'm one of them, but I'm saying, now all this talk, or at least before was, and again, I say that because right now that talk has pretty much died down once again, at least until I guess probably after the Holm fight. Then if it happens, she beats Holm, then, I'm sure the Cyborg will come out or whatever. But if she was to walk away and you have Cyborg saying, okay, the problem's been, they always said Cyborg had to drop down to her weight. Now Cyborg's supposedly trying to drop down to her weight, and now she's getting out. I just think it leaves it open for that. Not that she cares, or not that, that she needs to care about it, but I just think you're going to have that wrinkle of fans that would, thrive on that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. We should see how this situation develops going forward. And one more thing I wanted to hit on before a special guest joins the podcast. Nick Diaz, there's settlement talks going on with the Nevada Athletic Commission, he's saying they're going well and could possibly lead to a 2016 return. Diaz took social media recently speak about his discussions with the NAC, and he said, just spoke to my legal team at Campbell & Williams, and talks with the Nevada Athletic Commission are going well. We're working hard to get this right. Thanks for the support. Which in code means I'm not going to say anything because I don't want anything messed up, but MMA Fighting confirmed that talks were underway, and the sources claim that Diaz could be back in an octagon sometime in 2016. Well, thank goodness for this, because I've never seen such a negative reaction to anything in this sport pretty much ever, with the exception of maybe of the Reebok deal that the UFC signed. But Diaz could be back. And Diaz, he's a fighter, and the guy got screwed over by a vindictive personal vendetta by members of the NAC. I'm excited that this could possibly happen, especially with the White House petition reaching over 100,000 signatures too.
Yeah, I think it was, again, we said it was a vendetta kind of against Diaz to begin with. We looked at everything. I mean, you got a guy using performance-enhancing drugs, only getting a year. He's marijuana, and he gets whatever, a 5-year ban. We discussed at length, and I'm glad to see that. At least maybe I guess cooler heads are prevailing now, or I don't know if it's cooler heads or just the fact that they're seeing such a backlash of this that they're worried about I don't say what it looks like, but I mean, when you got big names of the sports, I mean, I don't think there was one person that didn't side with Diaz as far as names in the UFC. I don't think anybody did not take Nate Diaz's side.
Yeah, the only thing I remember seeing is people not boycotting fighting in Nevada because they really didn't care. I remember Demetrius Johnson doing something like that.
And also the Olympic, I can't remember his name now. Cejudo, right?
Cejudo was going to boycott.
Yeah.
And Demetrius Johnson just didn't give a hoot about anything Nick Diaz related.
Yeah.
When GSP is backing Nick Diaz, there's a problem. There's a problem with what you think, because a guy who was one of the biggest rivals of Diaz said, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and I think names like that are what kind of made them hey, wait a minute, we need to step back and take a look at this, because I think they're looking at this as this could be something to open up a can of worms that we may not want to deal with.
Exactly. And the UFC is one of our biggest moneymakers and biggest draws. Over boxing now at this point, probably. So they'll figure all of that there. All right, want to transition here. We've got a special interview that Sean was able to get. We're going to be joined by Alex Donno for a quick interview with Sean, host of the Alex Donno Show on WQAM in South Florida. You can listen to the Alex Donno Show every weekday from 6 to 10, and specifically on Friday nights, you can listen to the Fight Night with Alex Donno and Frank Zaffery from 6 to 8 on WQAM. So Sean was able to sit down with Alex, talk about a couple things, including the return of George St-Pierre possibly coming back, Ronda Rousey and her upcoming fight against Holly Holm, the Conor McGregor Jose Aldo spectacle that we all can't wait for, and of course the ensuing return of John Jones, who doesn't have an opponent at this point, but we all kind of feel like it's going to be Daniel Cormier. So take a listen and let us know what you think. Sound off in the comments, and here we go.
For all your latest news and rumors of the UFC, go to thefullmountmma.com. Now back to the TFM Live podcast. Here's Sean Stanley. Sean Stanley here for the TFM Live podcast, brought to you by thefullmountmma.com. And I'm glad to welcome on with me right now. He is Mr. Alex Donno. You can hear him 6 to 10 weekdays on WQAM here in South Florida, and also on 6 to 8 every Friday night. He breaks down the MMA. Alex, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to talk to you, dude. You been okay yourself?
I've been doing good. You've been a busy man as of late. Also, the Panthers starting up as well.
Yeah, man. Keeping nice and busy, working on the Panthers hockey broadcast, doing the pregame, postgame intermissions. They're doing well so far. They've won a couple of big games, and also working on the Hurricane broadcast. So. Fall is always a busy time of year, and as far as the Panthers go, they could be playing, deep into May if things keep going this way. They could be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, an exciting time here in South Florida. It's not just because the heat season started.
Yeah, that's another thing, too, that'll keep me busy. I don't work with them specifically, but certainly another thing I have to watch.
Most definitely. But we got you on here on the TFM Live podcast. We're going to talk a little MMA, UFC. I want to start with a heavyweight that's returning, Fedor, to the Rizin Fighting Federation. I want to get your thoughts, one, on the pick of him going to the Rizin Fighting Federation, and then also, well, now I guess it's his former opponent, but your original thoughts on Jadeep Singh.
Yeah, I mean, all of this looks like a money grab for Fedor, right? And I know he's got history fighting in Japan, was big for the Pride Fighting Championships, fought on New Year's Eve before. But the guy, Saka Kibara, who's running this new Rizin Fighting Championships, was the guy who ran Pride back in the day. So he's got a history with Fedor. Offered him big, big money, as we heard, 7 figures is the rumored total for one night. So, Fedor, who had a chance to finally make his debut in the octagon, I'm sure the UFC was negotiating with him again, decided, I don't know if this was more of an emotional choice for him or more of a financial choice, but, to spurn the UFC again to fight over in Japan. I think there's still maybe a chance that Fedor just does the one fight in Japan and still could end up in the UFC. I'm not going to get my hopes up for that, but it really does look like he's doing this for the money, because I doubt the UFC would offer him the type of coin that Rizin offered him for one night of fighting. But then as far as his opponent, what we're hearing this week is that a man who I'd never heard of before this whole thing started, named Jadeep Singh, who's more of a kickboxer than an MMA fighter, was signed to fight Fedor. He's got a 1-0 MMA record, so no business fighting the greatest heavyweight of all time. But Jadeep Singh was in to fight Fedor, but apparently Fedor now needs a new opponent because Jadeep Singh is out of shape and they can't make that fight happen. So the search continues. I hope they bring him somebody legitimate, and I don't know who that could be. I think maybe Sergey Haritonov is out there. That would be a legitimate opponent. Or they could even try to resurrect Randy Couture, who retired a few years ago. But there's certainly history there, and try to make that matchup. So there are some options out there that would be better than a Jadeep Singh type, because I think that at this point, Fedor owes it to his fans. He owes it to the general public to at least fight somebody that MMA fans have heard of, not Jadeep Singh.
Yeah, 100%. And then your thoughts on the fact that this is going to be on tape delay, especially with the world of social media now. Is there any such, of course, tape delay is there, but, doesn't that just take away from everything? Because you're already going to know pretty much what's going to go down before the fight even airs.
Yeah, I like to have the option to watch it live. I've watched a lot of these, traditional Japanese New Year's Eve shows before. There's some of them that I watch live because they usually happen in the middle of the night, the time differences. I guess that's why they feel okay airing it on tape delay. But it's nice to have the option to watch it live. Like you said, there have been some years where, I stayed up until 5, 6 a.m. to watch the whole thing. There are other years where, I woke up the next day and fired it up on my DVR. But, yeah, in this day and age of live sports, if you're a Fedor fan, chances are you follow a lot of people on Twitter who are also Fedor fans who are checking the results. And so, yeah, you're going to wake up that next morning and you're already going to know if he armbarred his opponent or knee-barred his opponent within the first 30 seconds, or if he loses in some horrific upset. So I'm with you. Even if there'd probably be a 75% chance I would DVR this and watch it the next day, to at least have the option to watch it live, I think is key.
Most definitely. Again, we have Alex Donno from 56 WQAM. Make sure you check him out online. You can catch him all here in South Florida. Moving on to Ronda Rousey. She's got a fight coming up, UFC 193 with Holly Holm. Your thoughts? Is she too good for her own good right now in the UFC?
Yeah, it's hard to it's just hard to match her up, and Holly Holm is not ready. I think I'm pretty confident in that. Maybe she'll go out there and prove us all wrong, but in the couple of UFC fights that Holly has had, she just looks very cautious, very tentative, almost as if she's working on things more so than really going out there trying to win fights. So can she just flip some switch and all of a sudden go out there and really terrorize Ronda Rousey? And what I mean by working on stuff is, when I watch a lot of regional fights with, guys who have, 1-0, 2-0 pro records, they oftentimes, if they're going up against opponents and they're really saying, okay, I'm going up against a southpaw, so I really need to practice, what it's like to move around, work with a southpaw. Or now I'm going up against a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm just going to sort of take this slow, go through the motions, and learn something here tonight, kind of like a sparring session. That's the way that Holly Holm has treated her first couple of fights. So it's been very underwhelming. And I feel like she's 2 or 3 fights away before she could really challenge Ronda Rousey. So it's probably happening too soon. So I think that's the issue with matching up Ronda. She's cleaned out most of the division already, and then somebody like Holly Holm could be a great future opponent, but 2 or 3 years in the future, but they've got to do it right now. We still maintain that maybe the only woman on planet Earth who has a shot at Ronda Rousey is Chris Cyborg, who has made her 140-pound debut, working her way down to 135 pounds. I'm hoping that within a year or so they could make that fight. I still think Ronda wins it, but Cyborg at least has the pedigree and the nasty to give Ronda a challenge. It's going to take somebody like that. But as far as, Ronda being too good for her own good, the only positive thing is that she's become such a media darling and such a fan darling and kind of the leader of a weird, bizarro feminist movement that I don't think she willingly signed up to be the leader of, but the DNB thing has really been taking off for her lately. She's become so famous that a lot of fans don't seem to care that she's winning her fights at 37, 47 seconds, right? Like a lot of people still seem to be, if she's become the number one pay-per-view draw now, they still seem to be willing to drop money to watch her fight, even though they know it's going to be over very quickly. So I don't know if eventually it's going to catch up to her, that nobody can push her beyond a minute or a round. But as for right now, people seem to be willing to tune in just for the Ronda Rousey show.
Yeah, no, 100% there. What do you think about her comments about her wanting to venture out Hollywood, WWE, things like that? Do you think that's going to have an effect on this? Not that the Cyborg match is going to happen, but do you think that could have a potential effect on that fight ever happening?
Yeah, it could make the timing difficult, I guess. I think the right thing to do for Rousey would be, because I think she definitely has, a future in Hollywood, and I'm sure she could have a future in the WWE if she wanted it, to really kind of keep that stuff. And she's found a way to film a couple of movies per year without affecting her fighting, so I think that's working out for her. But if she really wants to dive head first into Hollywood, to wait until you retire, to fight a couple more years, and then really start stepping up the movie schedule, because and also the more fights she wins, the more valuable she becomes to Hollywood. I mean, they're really going to be wanting to cast her in even more of these Fast and Furious movies if she has an even longer reign as champion. So as long as she has, because I really can't criticize Sean the job that she's been doing. When she first announced that she was going to do some movies before she had done The Expendables and Fast 7 and Entourage, I was really worried, thinking, man, how is she going to balance the time to fight more than, once per year while doing all these movies? And to her credit, she's found a way to do it. The WWE thing is a little bit different because I'm sure Dana White is worried she's going to go out there and get injured, and that could affect her UFC career. So she may really have to wait on that until she's done fighting, which could only be a couple of years away. But I hope this doesn't put the Cyborg fight in jeopardy because I need Ronda to stay around long enough to make that fight happen. I don't think she needs it as much as Floyd Mayweather needed the Manny Pacquiao fight, but it'd be a nice little feather on her cap. It'd be a nice kind of cherry on top of her legacy. Because the thing with Cyborg, the reason why that's sort of different than Mayweather Pacquiao is, I don't think enough of, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the lion's share of casual MMA fans really know Chris Cyborg. I think Chris Cyborg is like the best kept secret among the hardcore fans. And yeah, I know she had, a high profile fight on Showtime against Gina Carano, but that's already 6 years ago since that happened. Yeah. So I don't think if Ronda Rousey, if she retires a year from now, never having fought Cyborg, there's not going to be a major outcry of people saying, oh, well, she's not legitimate because she never fought Chris Cyborg, who's been out there. I just don't think at this point enough people know about Cyborg because she's been, hidden in Invicta for these last couple of years. So if Cyborg wants to really make herself known, she needs to drop that extra 5 pounds, jump over to the UFC as soon as possible, fight a couple of opponents there, and remind people that she's for real, remind people she's out there, and then maybe there will be an outcry for Rousey versus Cyborg.
Yeah, I thought it was weird how quickly the Cyborg Rousey died down as soon as Holly Holm was announced as the opponent by the fans in general. And then I guess maybe after the fight November 14th, it might pick back up if Rousey is victorious over Holm.
Yeah, I hope so. And maybe it's up to Cyborg's PR team to put her back on SportsCenter. That was an awful interview the last time she tried that. But she's got to get publicity because she's not getting it in Invicta that airs on UFC Fight Pass because only the hardcore fans are watching that. So if she wants to remind people that, hey, aside from Ronda Rousey, I'm the best female fighter on the planet. It's her and I. She's got to make sure people even know she exists.
Definitely. All right, we'll move forward here. Are you looking forward to the Aldo McGregor UFC 194 fight? And what are your expectations for that? When you're speaking about the fanfare that Rousey's gotten, I think McGregor's gotten almost as big by fans loving him or hating him because there's no in between with him. It's either you like him or you hate him.
Yeah, I think it's the biggest fight the UFC can make and has made. So I'm very excited for Aldo McGregor to finally fight. And anytime you're leading up to a Jose Aldo fight, you've got to be sort of cautiously optimistic that he's going to show up healthy. But, if we know Jose Aldo with how mad he is now at McGregor, he's going to do whatever he can, even if he's got to carry his arm into the octagon. He's going to make sure he shows up this time because he cannot afford to miss another one of these. But, I think the buzz for this one is going to be a little bit less than it was for the first time they tried to do it back in July, only because, they had that world tour. They were doing the embedded reality show special. They're traveling around the world the first time, and they're doing a press conference every 4 days. They kind of burned out that first round of publicity where they can't really go back to the well and do that again. So this time, I think they're just relying more on word of mouth, on fans spreading the word and clamoring for it from what they read on the websites and what they read in the blogs. So I'm supremely excited for it, even though it's not going to maybe carry the same sort of blockbuster pre-fight buzz than the UFC 187, I believe it was, the July show would have carried. As far as the fight itself, this one is really hard for me. It's one of those situations where I think my heart tells me McGregor has a legit shot, and my mind, the more logical part tells me that, hey, listen, Jose Aldo is the best. It's his fight to win, and he'll probably go out there and make McGregor look amateur the way he's done to so many other fighters. I think that although he's got certainly edges, I think in power a little bit. He's got edges with his low kicks, but as far as overall striker, McGregor is very good, probably better than people give him credit for because a lot of people dislike him so much. But his movement, his footwork is stellar. the way that he could just so fluidly throw those wicked left hands and the high kicks. I mean, the guy looks like he was born throwing strikes. He's such a natural at it.
Yeah,
I think his undoing, if anything, could be that McGregor keeps his hands very low. That's kind of the key to the way he's able to move around so fluidly. So anytime you keep your hands low against a guy like Jose Aldo, you're playing with fire a little bit. So it's up to him to be able to move around and avoid Aldo's counterattacks, because Aldo's going to be the type of guy who's going to stand back and try to wait for his openings. And then I think the real wild card, though, is the ground game, because Aldo is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We don't see him use it enough, but we know he's high level at it. And McGregor, I think, is kind of disrespected for his ground skills. He's very good with his jiu-jitsu as well. Not a bad wrestler or defensive wrestler. I think Aldo should have the edge if it goes to the ground. So if it becomes more of a striking battle, I think it kind of depends on, whether McGregor can avoid taking a counter punch to the face. And for Aldo, if he gets chewed up early by high kicks from Conor, it could be Conor's fight. But this is one where it's probably too early to make an official pick. But I think it's going to be a stellar matchup, whether it's 4 minutes or 25 minutes. I think fans will get their money's worth.
Definitely. Looking at another fight upcoming, the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale, Frankie Edgar and Chad Mendes. What are you thinking about this fight as far as, again, it's on free TV, and it's Edgar against Mendes. Is this one of those where UFC's, giving you that good fight for free?
Yeah, I think with this being on Fox Sports 1 on free TV, I think that's okay here, because you've got two fighters, especially Frankie Edgar, who I think has been kind of underutilized because he's not fought that frequently in the last couple of years, and he's still one of the best fighters on the planet. And, Chad Mendes has got a good personality, a fun fight style. I think to throw fans a fight like that on free TV is fine, because, there's not a title on the line, maybe a title shot on the line, but you're whetting people's appetites, I think. So to put a semi-marquee fight on free TV, I think this one is fine and a good move by the UFC. And I lean a little bit towards Frankie Edgar in this one. I really do. And I'm a Chad Mendes fan, but Frankie to me is a more complete fighter, even though he's going to give up a little bit of size even to the short Chad Mendes. Mendes probably the slightly bulkier guy. Edgar's just so small no matter who he goes up against. But I think Edgar is going to have an advantage in that he's such a complete mixed martial artist that, he's not only an elite level boxer, he's an elite level wrestler, and he does all the stuff in the middle so well. His timing, the way he throws his punches and then flows directly into a level change and a takedown. He's just so silky smooth in the way he puts everything together. And Mendes is very good at all of those things, but not great the way that Frankie is. I think Mendes' advantage is going to be he packs more power in his hands, whereas, Edgar is going to just sting you with bee sting after bee sting until he really wears you down and can put you away that way. So I'm sure there's a chance that Mendes could connect with a big punch and end Frankie's night, but I think Frankie's going to pick him apart, wear him down, and start really wrestling him. And I use the term wear down loosely here, because you don't really wear down Team Alpha male guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to be
a full training camp. So I'm sure that Mendes is going to have cardio throughout the fight, but Edgar's going to grind on him a lot. So you talk about the UFC giving out good fights for free. The one that does puzzle me is I think it's also in December 10th, I believe. It's going to be on UFC Fight Pass, when you're going to have Paige VanZant
Yep.
in the main event, and then Sage Northcutt, the new phenom, the new sensation, is going to be earlier on that card. And those are, I think they're 19 years old and 21 years old respectively, and the UFC is really trying to promote both of those young fighters. To put that on Fight Pass, to me, makes no sense. It's one thing to be on, Fox Sports 1 or Fox, to be on free TV available to anybody, but UFC Fight Pass, and I'm a subscriber myself, but that's for the hardcore of the hardcore. So if you've got a couple of young stars you're trying to promote to new fans, you put them on the service that only the existing hardcore fans use. That's puzzling to me. If you want to really, show Sage Northcutt and Paige VanZant to the world, you would do it on Fox Sports 1 or Fox, not Fight Pass.
Well, don't you think that maybe they're trying to see, okay, if they can't draw the hardcore fans, then they're not going to draw the casual fans. At least that was my thought on why they kind of put him on the Fight Pass, to say, okay, if they can get the numbers with the people that we know love MMA or UFC, then we'll bump them up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure if that really makes sense for the two of those, because they've been doing so many mainstream interviews the last couple of weeks, and they seem to be the type of fighters that, to me, Fight Pass is made for. It's made more for like a Junior Sunsout type, like somebody that MMA fans appreciate, but mainstream fans would probably never really get behind. I just think if you've got, Sage Northcutt, who looks like a Ken doll, and Paige VanZant, who looks like a Barbie doll, you'd like to at least display them to the people who aren't already fans of your sport. And eventually, if they've built up some cachet, you can start putting them on Fight Pass, and more people will subscribe to that service. I just don't know if people are going to flock to Fight Pass to find them.
I got you. I understand there. Alex Donno, 560 WQAM. You can listen to him 6 to 10 weekdays here in South Florida. I want to get your thoughts on the returns of two people, John Jones and GSP, and what you think their impact may have on the UFC.
Yeah, I love this. I want both of those guys to come back. John Jones is a little bit closer. I think we can see him fight within the next 6 months. George St-Pierre maybe within the next 12 months. But it's going to be a little bit different, I think, the returns of each of those guys, because John Jones, no question in my mind, he wants to come back and reclaim his title belt. I know it's not officially his belt, but he's got a victory over the guy who currently holds that belt in Daniel Cormier. The two of them have beef. They go back and forth on social media all the time. They had bad blood the first time they fought. When John Jones returns, and watch out for that April date when they're trying to get to New York City finally, because they're suing the state of New York to try to get MMA legalized and regulated. So they're trying to make that happen in April, and that would be a good time to throw John Jones back in there. He's a New York guy. They love him there. So he's going to go back and try to reclaim that belt, and I think he will win it back. He's kept himself in great shape during his time away. Now, with George St-Pierre, based on the comments made by his teammate Rory McDonald, he may not be interested in coming back for the belt, right? George St-Pierre, I think, is leaning to returning right now, but he might come back to take interesting fights regardless of the belt being on the line. Like, you might see him decide, you know what, I've got some unfinished business with Johnny Hendricks. I want to fight him whether he's the belt holder or not. Or, my dream would still be, even in 2015 or 2016, if you could find a way to make GSP versus Anderson Silva happen, that fight would still have value to me, just given the names of the two guys. So, with George St-Pierre, it may not be, I'm going to come back and fight Robbie Lawler and win my belt back. It may be about the interesting super fights, whereas for John Jones, I think he wants to get right back in there and get that title belt back.
Most definitely. Alex, I thank you for your time. I want to get one more question before I get you out of here. Nick Diaz, the Nevada Athletic Commission. This, I don't want to call it a circus, but the whole way it's played out. Your thoughts on that? And now apparently there are talks going on right now that are going pretty well. Now he may be back sometime in 2016. Your thoughts on this whole situation from when it began with a 5-year suspension on to where we're at here today?
Yeah, well, when they announced the 5-year suspension, I was watching that unfold live on UFC Fight Pass, and I think the word circus was pretty appropriate. It looked as though the commissioners, especially Pat Lundvall, that woman on the commission who's got a history of being kind of a loose cannon and a crazy person, it seemed like they were motivated by spite. Because, Diaz had been a multi-time offender in that state. He's given them a hard time before, failing marijuana tests and not cooperating procedurally. So it seemed like they were out to get him. And the result of that was giving him an unprecedented penalty, unprecedented and unwarranted, for something as silly as a positive marijuana test, when the guy who he fought and tested positive for steroids got a 1-year ban. It made no sense, and it seemed like they were motivated by spite, and there was nothing in their bylaws that said you could give a guy a 5-year ban for that offense. So it made no sense whatsoever. They had the power to do it, but it was an abuse of power. And now there's been just so much positive support going out from Nick Diaz. You've got celebrities jumping on the bandwagon, Cher, Jeremy Piven, Tommy Chong. I'm sure a lot of people in between who signed that White House petition.
Yeah.
Ronda Rousey also publicly speaking in his support. They had that White House petition that needed 100,000 signatures. They had 113,000 by the deadline. So I'm not saying the president would step in and overturn this ban, but all the positive publicity for Diaz, I think, has reminded the Nevada Commission that what they did was a very unpopular move. Fans do not support them, and they should rethink this. And, yeah, apparently what we've been hearing these last couple of days is that Diaz's legal team and the UFC's legal team have been in talks, settlement talks with Nevada, because the next step here would have been Diaz's legal team suing them, taking them to court, and resolving it that way. And nobody wants to do that. It's easier to settle, and I think Nevada has realized they stepped out of turn, and legally they probably would have that ban, if not overturned completely, drastically shortened. So, yeah, there have been settlement talks, and I'm hearing, Sean, that Diaz may be able to fight again as soon as this summer, which would be amazing if they could make it happen that soon, and that would effectively completely throw the ban out. So hopefully that news is true, that the settlement is close and we can see Diaz again, in 2016.
Awesome. Alex, I thank you for joining us here on the TFM Live podcast. Let the listeners know how they can follow you on your social media outlets.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I love Twitter, so follow me there at Alex Donno, Donno spelled Donno. You can follow me on Instagram at Alex Donno 560, and you can find me on Facebook, just my name, Alex Donno, so easy to go there. So if you guys want to check me out on social media, I'd love that. Thank you.
And you can listen to him every day from 6 to 10 on WQAM, and now you can hear him, the Hurricanes, the Panthers. Is there a time you're not on WQAM right now, Alex?
Just right now.
Awesome. I thank you for your time and appreciate the interview.
Thanks, man. Thank you. Have a nice day.
We want to thank Alex for joining us, and Sean, thank you, as always, for your insight on TFM Live, the official podcast of thefullmountmma.com. You got anything else you want to say to our listeners out here?
No, just hit us up on Twitter at The Full Mount, me at SS Sports Talk, you at B Coyle 11.
Yes, that is correct. So, yeah, a little bit of a thin week news-wise, but like I said, business is about to pick up with an incredible November and December slate in the UFC, and who knows what the hell is going on with Bellator and Rizin, but we'll be talking about it if it makes news. Don't you worry about that. So we want to thank you guys for listening again. TheFullMountMMA.com. This is the official podcast called TFM Live. You can follow us online at The Full Mount, at SS Sports Talk, at Rico11. Thank you guys for listening.
The TFM Live podcast is brought to you by TheFullMountMMA.com. Check us out on Twitter at The Full Mount.